I didn't feel that I was the kind of person that could make instruments. I was a musician, I wasn't an instrument builder, and I had no experience. Because I didn't know anything, I was free to come up with something that people thought was insane, but nevertheless worked. One of the things that drove me to have a design, or to have this design, was I wanted to string this instrument with really low strings, unlike a sitar or most, any Indian instrument that has sympathetic strings, and there are other instruments that have sympathetic strings too, generally don't have really low sympathetics. And the reason, or one of the reasons, is because if you could imagine stringing this instrument, the sitar, with really thick strings, these really thin strings. If you could imagine stringing that with really thick strings, it would be too much tension for the instrument. It would implode the instrument. But I wanted to have the Bazantar have more of an orchestral sonic characteristic with its sympathetics. Now, that led to this design, and where much of the time people think that, I'm stringing strings onto the instrument, I'm stringing these strings onto this body, which is reasonable and intuitive, it's not what's happening. What's happening is this thing here, this rigid housing here, is holding all of the tension of these sympathetics inside of itself, instead of having the tension of these sympathetics being held by this body. So this holds the tension, not this. That allows for much lower strings and much higher tension. And that allows, well, it allows for a pattern. And it also allows for a completely different sonic machine than say like a sitar or a sarod or a sarangi. You can hear an upper harmonic come in that's in tune with that. That's nice. And see, there are 3 layers of sympathetics. There's the lowest layer, which I'm tuning right now, and then there's a middle layer, and then there's an upper layer of 16 strings are on the upper layer, 7 strings are on the middle layer, and 6 strings are on the lower layer. The tricky thing in the design is these long strings, which go from here all the way to this last thing, they have to run, you can see they have to run the entire length of this channel without rattling or hitting anything. And a low string, let's see if I can hit this. You can see how that low string vibrates when I hit this. So it has to run completely free, and then when it's really cooking and really generating a lot of energy, it can't hit anything. Two things came into play with the creation of the Bazantar. One was that my teacher had given me the impression that it would take me 20 years to learn the subtlety of the difference of the pitches in Indian music. That was his belief, that a Western guy couldn't learn that stuff because a Western mind had been polluted by these synthetic vibrations. So what I did is I did the math. I started to do the math of finding out what the vibrations actually were, which my teacher actually didn't know. I had to find that out and just work that out. But the other thing that I did was I started playing Indian music, and particularly sarangi music, in my sleep at night on autoplay. I was trying to collapse the pattern from both angles. One is from my intuitive dream time, so I could just hear the intervals. Collapsing it from the intellectual, which is understanding the math. Well, so that's the process that I was in when the Bazantar came into, not into being, but when it came into my imagination. What was happening is I was playing my bass, but I was listening to sarangi music, and I was dreaming that my bass had sympathetic strings on it. Even though I didn't remember the dream, I thought that I had read a book. It wasn't until 3 or 4, probably 4 days later, that I put the CD in that I was listening to earlier in the week. And when the music started playing, the dream downloaded, and I was like, wow.